So I'm going to be doing a little first impression review of ShinHan Professional Poster Color. I've got set B here, which comes with 30 different colors. As you can imagine, that means there's also a set A, and I believe that also comes with 30 colors. But opening up the pamphlet, we can see that there are 69 colors. So I don't know what happened to those other 9. Maybe they're just something not offered in either set A or B. So let's take a look what else we've got for information in this packet on poster colors. Swatches, of course, always helpful. Color index. Got a legend here for degree of transparency / opacity. So we've got transparent, semi-transparent, semi-opaque, opaque, and that's going to be, it looks like all these little black squares that are underneath each of these colors. And it looks like all of the colors are going to be opaque, which is frankly what I would come to expect from poster colors. So I have to admit, this isn't actually the first time that I have unboxed this set. I did so just a little bit earlier before I decided to make this review, and it came organized in a really haphazard way. I don't know. You'll see a little bit of my OCD here as I had to reorganize things as things weren't arranged by hue, they weren't arranged by number, so ultimately I decided to arrange them by number, and I only opened a few, so there's gonna at least be an element of surprise for each and every one of these, or well, rather the majority of these colors. Poppy Red is the first color I opened, so before I started making this video I already did a little bit of mixing to it, and now as we can see it's actually still pretty runny. I'm completely unfamiliar with poster color. This is the first time that I've ever opened them, ever even seen them in person, so this is going to be a really new experience for me. I'm going to be using the Mossery Sibylle Maynette Gouache Practice Workbook because handily it actually has these pre-printed color wheels and swatches where I've already utilized that to experiment with some gouache paint, and I want to keep up the habit of testing out paints before jumping into a project with them, which is why I've made this ShinHan Professional Poster Color page. I labeled each swatch, and there's the evidence that I did a little bit of work before deciding to make this review. I'm just going to be using really simple tools for this test. Only this one brush, which is a number 4 flat acrylic brush from Artist Loft, which, will it focus? Maybe. This is something that is extremely inexpensive and actually really nice quality for how inexpensive it is. I think I got this for one of those like Michael's packs for, I don't know, like $10. And will it focus? Hold please. And there we go. I don't know if this is because the camera favors people to focus on or it's a comment on how pale I am, but we're gonna ignore that and move on. We already know that I had started this out before deciding to do this video, so let's go ahead and pick up where I left off, which was surprise number 20, which is completely dry. It's a paste. Yeah, I held it over. Oh, nothing happens. So, okay, pre-qualifier here. I actually received these paints as a gift for Christmas, I think, last year? Maybe 2 years ago. Either way, it's a little disconcerting that it only took that much time to completely dry out this tub. Because this is the first time that I've even opened any of these paints, and even though paints typically don't come with a seal for freshness, this just isn't a great sign. Moving on to number 23, Blue Gray, and I'm just gonna start shaking it immediately. You saw with the Poppy Red how runny it was, and then with our blue, you saw that it was, you know, a complete dried out mess, but open that up even after a little bit of shaking and you see that it's even runnier. So we're gonna screw that right back on and shake. And even more shake, 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 shake. Off camera, shake, 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 shake. Okay, let's check on it again. And is it gonna be any thicker? We got a bubble butt. Delightful. And boop. Okay, so that's still really runny, but we're gonna just do a little dip test here. And I see that some of the pigment is holding onto the brush, so I'm gonna go ahead and apply a swatch of it and see what happens. It's a real weird consistency. It definitely puddles on and applies really quickly, but it's super shiny, so that suggests to me that I still haven't given it a good enough shake and that the binding is still separated from the pigment. Let's just see what we got for Naples yellow right off the bat. No pre-shaking. Hey, it's actually pretty good. That looks like the consistency of our poppy red after I had given it a good shake. So we're just gonna go ahead and immediately do a dip test. Okay, yeah, we got pigment. Let's go ahead and apply, and it does run a little better, but it's still got a pretty high gloss to it. It's not as concerning as 23 though. That looks like it's gonna take a really long time to dry, but I'm still not completely convinced that the binder has integrated with the pigment as much as it should. So, okay, permanent yellow, number 31. Again, no shaking off screen, and now we've got putty. Well, it doesn't look completely dry. There was like a pocket of binder there, so we're gonna give it a really good shaking and see if hopefully this can combine into something that is going to be a nicer yeah, that worked out pretty well. See, good shaking. That's all you need. Sometimes all we need is a good shake. Okay, another dip test. The pigment held way nicer this time, and it applies a little bit more buttery. Like you can even tell from the reflection in the camera how 23 and 29 way glossier than 31 is. So 31, that yellow seems promising to me. That seems like it's still in pretty good quality, or well, pretty good condition. Cobalt green hue, number 38 is next, and we're gonna go ahead and do a reveal without a pre-shake to see what condition this one's in. And this is kind of an in-between of 31 and 29, or even 23, like in between of all the three previous. Lots of cakiness, but also lots of runniness. So a little bit of a shake off screen, not too much, and yeah, that's nice. At least it combined nicely. I bet this is gonna have pretty good pigment. Not as nice as 31, but let's see. Yeah, it's applying pretty nicely. Pretty buttery, but actually ever so slightly glossy and transparent, so maybe with a little more shaking it's gonna be better. Fingers crossed. Next up is turkey green, number 39, and we're not going to do any sort of pre-mixing, just see what this looks like right out of the box. And we have both pasty and runny, so this is definitely a candidate for doing a lot of mixing, but out of curiosity, I'm just going to try applying some from just the pasty side. And we can already tell that there's definitely something going wrong if we do that, because there's some streakiness, just a tiny bit of transparency that you can see in this swatch. So that's what happens if you don't mix these beforehand. It's evidence that pigment and binder need to be thoroughly mixed together in order to get the result you want. What poster paints are supposed to look like is always going to be a dry matte color. You can see in 2 through 18, those I actually all dried already. It should be really fast drying, really vibrant and matte rather than glossy. 23 and 29 are still really glossy and really wet, where you can see that 31 already looks like it's nice and dry and matte. So that's how I know that 31 is as it should be, but 23 and 29 are gonna need a little bit more mixing. Unfortunately, shaking up turkey green made a little bit of a mess, which hasn't happened to me so far with these. So I just tried to scoop up some of that off the side of the can, and now I'm just getting another glossy pool of pigment. So I don't know, so far the majority still look like they're working. I'm surprised that number 20, which was just a dry paste, ended up working better than some of these others that I've tried mixing up myself. So maybe you're wondering, hey, why was it that you were able to use that paste as something that you could actually apply to paper? Well, let me actually get into a little bit about what poster color is then. Poster color is in the same family as watercolor and gouache and acrylic gouache, because poster color paint is water-soluble paint. Watercolor is going to be basically at the bottom of the scale if we were to make a scale out of them, because it is highly transparent, highly water-soluble, and easy to work with, ? Depending on who you ask. No, that's not what I was trying to go with. It's easier to activate again with water. That's what I meant. So if you were to put water on top of watercolors, you would be able to bleed the pigment more and even lift up some of the color. So next up is going to be traditional gouache. Traditional gouache, likewise, is going to be water soluble, and it is also likewise going to be water activated. So you can get more layering when using traditional gouache with lighter colors over darker colors, where with watercolors, it's going to be best working from light to dark. As soon as you do a dark color in watercolor, you can't just paint like a light blue or a white on top of it and expect that to show up. The major difference between poster color paint and traditional gouache is that poster color paint not only dries faster, but it has a much more dependable pigment. Traditional gouache tends to lean, if it's a light color, it's going to dry darker, and if it's a dark color, it's going to dry lighter. This makes poster color paint really optimal for someone working in graphic design that has to absolutely stick to a brand's color, or for the animation industry, not only for being able to stick to the same colors, but being able to work quickly. With traditional animation is going to be really important, especially if you're doing cell painting, so that like the animation doesn't flicker as colors change. So back to the original question, okay, sure, but how did you take that paste and turn it back into paint that you could actually use on paper? It's because of the water activation. So all I have to do is take a little bit of water on my brush and work it into the paste, or maybe even take a little spray bottle or mister, and that is going to reactivate the paint and make it so that I can, well, use it once again. It's really similar to what you see with watercolor palettes that are made of bricks rather than something that you would get out of a tube. It's because these mediums are water activated. This is unlike any raw umber color that I have ever seen before. It has separated in a really interesting way. It's not too bad in terms of separating the binder and the pigment. I'm more curious about how it looks like there's two different shades of paint in here. It's kind of pretty in a way, so I'm actually going to experiment again about trying this out without mixing it. It's way darker on paper, even more curious, but as I've been babbling about what poster color is and the difference between it / similarities between it and watercolor and gouache, all of these browns have worked out really nicely. they're still just a little bit wet, but you can see that 23, 29 still super shiny and still haven't dried yet. I anticipate that 46 through 50 is going to dry in the way that we want and would expect for poster colors. French Gray number 53 is whoa, real watery. Dip that in and you can see like the pigment actually actively disappears on the brush. This isn't good, but you know what? I'm curious. Yep, that is completely transparent. Okay, let's screw that back on and give it a nice shaken. Alright, let's see. So that seems better, but I can still see the pigment even disappear a little, and it's barely showing up. Maybe it's not mixed. I have a suspicion that there's like a block of paste at the bottom here, which is unlike any of the other colors that we've run into so far. So I think we might end up having to take more drastic measures than just shaking it up a lot. Yeah, if I dig down, I can find at the bottom that there's more of that pigment. All I have to do is paint that little side. So, okay. We're gonna have to figure out something else to do for this. That's right, it's time for le palette neuf. Like artists of ye old, we're going to have to mix up our own paint, and this is a level of like intense art nerdistry that I haven't gotten into. Maybe one day when I want to mix a bit more alchemy with my practice, but in general, I'm not a huge fan of using a palette knife and mixing my own materials, so I'm glad this is the only one that we've come across, but yeah, let's see if we can get this French Gray to work. After a whole lot of mixing, I think we finally got the consistency that we want. Can see as soon as I dip the brush that the pigment is actually adhering to it and not visibly disappearing. Applying it to my swatch, I don't know, I wonder if those other layers that I put on it are going to affect how this one is going to adhere to the paper. I'm not going to judge it too hard based on the drying thing. Maybe I'll just try out another swatch later. So for the rest of these, I'm gonna take a few peeks, and I feel like we have hopefully run the gambit of all the different consistencies that we're going to find in this set of poster color paint. So you get the gist of things. There's going to be separation, there is going to be the pasty side, there is going to be the more viscous or runny variety. Maybe I'll get a dried up paint again, hopefully not. And typically when I find that separation, it's just going to be a matter of shaking it up as much as I can, and if that doesn't do the job, well, we're back to going to the palette knife. So I'm gonna speed through the rest of these, and I'll stop if only something significant comes up. And we spoke too soon. We have something that is going to be a pretty much dried up paste again. That's a shame. But we know that it is going to work, and in some cases might actually work a little bit better than some that we've mixed up that were really runny. Water activate. That is separated, but that is satisfying. Ah, oh well. Gonna have to give you the shaky shakes anyway. What? Arg, I've been purpled. No, oh, I'm sorry. I've been red violeted. I've been violated. Ignore me. Oh, this is impossible. Look at this. Oh man, it's almost opalescent. I almost don't want to mix it, but I gotta. It's unusable otherwise. Looks fine, but oh no, we got another case of the disappearing paint. I'm gonna give it a try anyway. Okay, a little bit shows up, but it's pretty sickly. I'm gonna try to see if there's any pigment or paste on the side here, and it does look like my brush has picked up more, but oh, when I put that on the page, then it's just sloppily combining with that, like, transparent binder. I don't know. Prospects do not look good. Another bird color. Very good. Peacock green. Let's see what you mean. Pretty good. Just a little bit of shaking. Oh, it's a crab. And, nice blue crab. Boop. No more blue crab. And instead, we get something grainy. Well, that's new. It even looks a little bit grainy on the page. Okay, instead of blue crab, what we have left over is the sand or muddy waters it was living in. I give up. I said I'd stop when something was new, but like pretty much every single one of these has something new with it. Okay, Compose Blue. You look pretty good. As usual. Just needs some mixing. Even after all that shaking, we're still pretty lumpy on the side there, but it works. Can actually tell right away from the exterior of this one that there's a lot of separation because we see some big pockets. So we're just gonna shaky shake this one up without even opening it. Let's see how the peacock of the blue variety turned out. Yeah, that's real good. Nothing too significantly different for all of the remaining colors that we've got. So fortunately, we get to zoom through the rest of these and finish up our swatches. Now that they're done, let's take a look back at what we've got. Can see that there's a couple of swatches that haven't dried completely and still have that glossy quality. It is certainly a mixing problem that in some cases I exacerbated myself with how I applied them to the page, so not going to be too harsh in my judgment. When we're still not done yet, there's one other thing that I wanted to try out to test these. The biggest downfall of this set is, and I am stupefied, it doesn't come with white. I feel like every single set of paints I have ever gotten come default with white and black, and I would absolutely argue that white is the most essential color to have. Like, I don't care what set you have white. Maybe the exception is watercolor. White is not a great color to mix with in watercolor, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. We're on poster colors right now, so as I am lacking in white, I am going to see if there is a chance that it might get along with some family members. And we're going to try mixing this with traditional gouache and with acrylic gouache. The first test is going to be with Winsor & Newton Designer Gouache Permanent White, because my instinct is that poster color is going to be closer to traditional gouache and hopefully therefore mix okay. So I'm taking that blue. Which blue did I use? Doesn't matter. It's blue and white to get a nice light blue, and it looks pretty good. That's nice and opaque. It's fairly buttery and easy to control with my flat brush. Looks better than a lot of the other swatches I've got on here. I also want to see how well they blend on the page together, so I'm going to dedicate one of these small swatches to that. And, whoa, it's actually kind of repelling, the gouache. Now that's strange. Let's keep experimenting a little with that. Let's see instead here what'll happen if we put the poster color on top of the gouache, and that's not really blending. Trying some water and gouache again on top of that, and yeah, still a little bit of that weird repelling, but also bleeding rather than a mixing or a gradient. Yeah, this is weird. Take a peek at that up close so you can see. I mean, the bleeding's kind of cool, but we want something that we can control a little better. I'm going to try to give this combination another chance and do an experiment with a long stripe of poster color paper with a traditional gouache. And that is still behaving strangely. Still having that weird repelling feature and a little less of the bleed. Instead, it's just sort of gooping on top of one another. Gonna try to just take a little bit of water to see if I can blend them that way, and still it's just creating these blocks and simultaneous bleeding. I've never really encountered a mixture like this before. Gonna go ahead and move on to the next combination, which I'm going to use instead the Turner Design gouache, which is still a traditional gouache. See if there's any difference according to brand. So the Winsor & Newton gouache created a nice mixture. Well, so we can see that opaque swatch turned out and it's already dry, so we know that they're binding in a good way. We'll do the same thing with the Turner, and it's a lighter blue just because I used a little bit more white, but it's reacting pretty much the same way that the Winsor & Newton did. There's just a very subtle amount of difference. I think I prefer the Winsor & Newton, but the real test is going to be seeing how they can blend into each other. And here we go. Oh, okay. Well, there's not quite as much of the repelling action going, but just keep on watching it bleed out here. That's no good. One more chance here with one of the longer stripes to give it a longer runway. Here we go, and oh my gosh, I just do not think this is going to work out. 2 stripes, 2 failures. We're going to go ahead and go over to Holben's acrylic gouache to see how that mixes. I'm actually going to try blending on the page itself rather than mixing on the palette. So just adding a little bit of moisture to the swatch first with just a touch of pigment. And globbing on that blue. I'm not getting the same sort of repelling. It is blending okay. It looks really messy on camera though, and it's fine, I guess. We've already proven that mixing into a solid color works well enough with poster colors. I don't think that there's any sort of major difference here between traditional gouache and the acrylic gouache, something that's not significant enough that I would say, yes, acrylic gouache, that has solved the problem. I'm not even gonna bother making another one of those long stripes. The other two were such a failure, and I do not have enough confidence from this little swatch, so I think at that, this experiment is over. The conclusion to this experiment is, unfortunately, poster color paint doesn't seem to mix well with either traditional gouache or acrylic gouache. So without the color white in this set, I don't think that I am going to pursue even a mini project. The swatches were enough for me to get a feel, and looking at this page again, you can see that 23 still isn't dry. So ShinHan's Professional Poster Color Set B is currently going on Amazon for, I believe, $133.33. Overall, what I got out of these is, honestly, not a particularly great impression. With the amount of mixing that has to happen and the colors being dry, it's not super great, considering especially that they're only 2 years old, which to some might sound like, okay, well sure, you hoarded it for 2 whole years, what do you expect? Well, with some of the things I mixed it with, the Winsor Newton gouache, that is, I don't even know how old, because this was a hand-me-down from someone that didn't want to work in gouache anymore and had been holding on to this for, they claimed, quite a few years, since maybe they were even a student, which would have been, maybe around like 5 years, and that was about like, 8 years ago, maybe more. So this is definitely over a decade old, and it's still working just fine. The Turner design is also probably close to a decade old, and it is just fine. Of course, it's in a tube, it's not in something like this, which I will give them a tiny bit of leeway, but then all poster colors come in a tub, such as this. So I'm really curious how this might compare to perhaps the more famous poster color art, which is the Knicker colors. That's what's used by Studio Ghibli, and I'm curious to get my hands on it. I believe that when I was looking up how to buy just individual colors, I could only find white being offered for the Knicker colors on Amazon. So if I wanted to pursue this, I would probably order just the 1 tub of white and accept that, okay, I need to mix these. It's not that bad. It's just a little bit of extra elbow grease that I have to put into getting these into a workable condition. Like I said, I'm not that interested in pursuing that right now, which just means that this is going to end up most likely sitting in my drawer of art supplies for who knows how many more years. Thus, ShinHan Professional Poster Color feels a little less than professional to me. I am a person that likes to definitely work with as little amount as possible and hold on to my products for as long as possible. I'm a waste not sort of person. Hate waste, love working small, love working with the same set of supplies for a very long time. So, ShinHan Professional Poster Color, don't know if I can truly recommend you, but I'd say that anyone that really wants to give these a try for themselves, I mean, it's not a huge investment for how many colors come in the pack. I believe even on the website it has a breakdown of they're a little over $4 for each tub, so long as you get to it immediately. I'd love to hear your experience with these colors. Leave me a comment, send me a message if anyone does that anymore, and thanks for sticking around for my review.